Okay, so you've handed us this really fascinating stack of sources, articles, research, notes, all around this topic that feels very current right now, childless living.
Mm-hmm. Exploring the lives of people without children, whether that's, by choice or maybe circumstance.
Exactly. And the core source we're digging into is Lisette Schuitemaker's book, Childless Living, The Joys and Challenges of Life Without Children.
Yeah, it's a really insightful book. It's a great overview of this growing group of people.
Absolutely. So our mission here is to pull out the key nuggets, the main insights from all this material, to give you a real sense of the topic, look at the different experiences, and maybe challenge some common assumptions.
Because you do hear about childless people more these days.
You really do.
Mm.
And the sources point out it's a significant chunk of the population, something like 1/5 in many wealthier countries.
And here's the bit that really caught my eye. One researcher cited Marion Dragged. She apparently called this group a bizarrely happy segment of the world population.
Bizarrely happy. I mean, come on. That phrase just makes you want to know more, doesn't it?
Huh.
Okay, let's get into it.
Right.
So one of the first things that jumped out from the sources is just how incredibly varied the lives of people without children are. The author, Schuitemaker, uses these boat metaphors.
Oh, yeah, the boat metaphors. They're quite vivid, aren't they?
Yeah,
A creative way to sort of picture the different approaches.
totally. Like the sturdy tugboats.
Right. Working hard, often full time, maybe filling in for colleagues who have kids, sometimes getting a bit of resentment for it, but really valuing their own time.
Yeah, that free time seems key. Then you've got the hydrofoils.
Mm-hmm. The ones on more of a spiritual path, finding their main joy in faith, or maybe their work is a kind of divine expression. Family life might even feel like a distraction for them.
And then, very relevant today, the lifeboats.
Yes, the ones deeply worried about the environment, about overpopulation, choosing not to add another consumer, essentially. That connects to antinatalism, which comes up later.
Good point. Then there are the pilot vessels.
The champions of emancipation, feminism, really pushing for women's self-determination beyond just being wives and mothers, fighting for equal rights.
And maybe less visible, the submarines.
Yeah, sort of traveling below the radar, doing their own thing, contributing quietly. Legacies maybe only a few people notice, and the source hints at this sort of underlying fear, like
Oh,
maybe secretly terrified no one will be there for them at the end. It's quite poignant.
it really is. And finally, the sturdy barges.
The ones who partnered with someone who already had kids, navigating step-family life, learning, as the book says, the fine art of tacking.
It's quite a fleet. What seems to link them, though, according to the author?
Well, it's that they generally have more explaining to do to ourselves and to others than people who follow the path of parenthood. That need to explain or justify really shapes things.
Right, because it's still seen as deviating from the norm, isn't it? But interestingly, the sources also mention some shared qualities that seem to pop up.
Yeah, definitely. Things like liking to structure their lives in less conventional ways, often quite autonomous, maybe unconventional thinkers.
Self-starters,
Yeah.
self-directed. Which makes sense if you don't have the constant demands of small children dictating your schedule.
Exactly. And needing to be okay with their own company. Self-sufficient.
And this one's quite profound. Self-fulfilling. The idea that they are the primary source of meaning in their own lives.
Which brings us back to that bizarrely happy quote, doesn't it? Marion Dragg's survey finding people were extraordinarily pleased with their lives, development contributions.
Yeah, and the source is careful to say it was a convenient sample, so you can't generalize too broadly.
Sure, sure.
But still, it's a striking finding. It makes you think, well, what is it about these lives, these qualities, that leads to that reported satisfaction?
And part of that might be explained by this idea of early articulators.
Ah, yes, tell us about them.
Well, it's about a third of childless men and women, apparently, who knew from very early on, like categorically and unequivocally, that parenting wasn't for them. It wasn't a later decision.
So it was innate somehow.
Seems like it. For this group, the source gives great examples. The Dutch guy who just wanted to travel, the businesswoman who never felt the pull, the Egyptian entrepreneur focused on projects.
The Canadian monk, the young wine master, happy with her life's flow, people who just love being alone, couples who felt they'd love kids too much.
Right. It shows that for many, it's a positive choice, a calling almost, not just a default or something they settled for.
But even with growing numbers and this, happiness factor, there's still societal pressure.
Oh, absolutely. That Taiwanese example has mentioned the woman feeling immense pressure despite not wanting kids. the author's own experience feeling expected to have them.
Even being one-fifth of the population, it's still a minority position, often questioned.
Yeah. But then you have that lovely anecdote, the grandmother calling these women mar-a-less.
A woman and a half.
Exactly. Acknowledging the strength it takes to carve your own path against the grain.
That idea of carving your own path really leads into the next theme, the paths people actually take, and just as importantly, the ones they don't. The author has this lovely metaphor, the inner film reel.
Yes, the inner film reel, or projected bandwidth. It's about her own realization, wasn't it? In her 30s, feeling her bandwidth was just narrower.
Right, and that staying true to herself meant acknowledging a life with children wasn't on that reel for her. It was about authenticity.
A really powerful self-awareness, and distinct from just postponing things, which is another big trend the sources cover.
Yeah, the global data on the average age of first-time mothers, it varies hugely, from like 18 up to over 31.
With places like the Netherlands averaging higher, around 29.4, it lets people focus on careers, sure, but the sources mention it brings issues of its own.
Hinting at fertility challenges later on, maybe? Or just more dense time frame.
Could be. But then there's the conscious choice not to have kids at all.
Yeah.
And the reasons are really varied and quite powerful.
There's the antinatalism angle you mentioned earlier.
Right, the view that the world is, frankly, too overburdened or full of suffering to ethically bring more people into it. The source cites that awful example of kids in Delhi with lung damage from pollution.
It's a stark perspective.
Yeah,
But other reasons are maybe less philosophical.
sure. Just finding the world too scary, prioritizing careers, or simply not wanting kids, preferring adult company, a quiet life.
And the sources get really personal, too, describing the 70-30 person.
Yeah, someone who mostly wants the child-free life but still feels a pull, like 30%, towards that unique mother-child intimacy.
Or the friend who loves the idea of babies but is happy without them. And the flip side, the older woman's still pained by it, avoiding baby shops.
Or people who felt they needed to heal from their own childhoods first, and by the time they felt ready, it was biologically too late.
That leads into the discussion about sterilization, too, like tubal ligation, even for younger women.
Mentioning researchers like Catherine Pearson and Heather Gentry, and the medical guidelines trying to balance regret versus autonomy.
And for some, that source emphasizes the irreversibility is exactly what they're looking for, a definite end to the question.
But we absolutely have to stress it's not always a choice, is it? That's so crucial.
Absolutely. Jody Day's work on the lost tribe of childless women, that deep pit of grief for the involuntarily childless, it's a huge part of the story.
And the losses are profound, often invisible to others. First day school photos, the community of mothers, grandparenting, heirs. Society can be quite deaf to it, as the source says.
Rebuilding after that kind of loss, after infertility, it's a journey. The sources mentioned Pamela Mahoney-Sigdino's The Stages of Grief, Denial, Anger.
Bargaining, depression, acceptance. Yeah, it's about finding a new story for your life when the expected one doesn't happen.
So when you look at that whole spectrum, the definite no from early on, the later choice, the postponement, the ones who desperately wanted kids but couldn't have them, what does all that variety tell you, the listener, about how we navigate these huge life choices? Or how life sometimes chooses for us? It's clearly not one simple narrative.
Not at all.
And thinking about those different paths, relationships inevitably come up, especially friendships, right?
Yeah.
How they shift when some become parents and others don't.
Yeah, that example really rings true. The woman wanting to actually talk to her friend, not just see the kids on a video call.
It's a common experience, that divergence. New parents suddenly have this whole new world, this shared language with other new parents.
Their social circles can totally transform, centered around kids' activities, schools.
While the non-parents' lives might seem, on the surface, not to change as drastically, they often have to be more proactive about finding friends who share their current life stage or interests.
Right. But the sources point out this really important role childless people often step into, the extra adults.
Yes, the Panks.
Exactly. Melanie Notkins, panky professional aunt no kids. And Savvy Auntie. Her research found nearly half of U.S. adult women are non-moms.
Wow, half. And Notkin emphasizes taking that aunt role seriously, like being an ultimate guide.
And Robert Millardo's research builds on that, looking at aunting and uncling as a form of generativity.
Generativity. That's like concern for future generations.
Precisely. Millardo sees aunts and uncles playing roles like mentors, keepers of family stories, buffers between generations, fellow travelers. And it's often reciprocal. The mentoring goes both ways.
And childless people are often overrepresented here, the sources say. Maybe because they have more time, more flexibility.
Likely, yeah. And Millardo makes this great point. Fun is one of the features that help fuel the intergenerational friendship. It's not just obligation.
That really comes through in the author's stories about her nieces and nephews, how the relationship evolved, being seen as a friend, having those grown-up conversations. It shows how rich those bonds can be.
Definitely. The sources also tackle step relationships for childless partners. Wednesday Martin's stepmonster research gets a mention.
Acknowledging it can be really challenging, especially for stepmothers, dealing with existing dynamics, the biological mom's role.
But also highlighting the potential for real positivity,
Yeah.
becoming the glue in a blended family, or adopting step-grandkids emotionally.
And woven through all this is that recurring question.
Why don't you have children?
Yep. The advice seems to be, try not to get defensive. Understand it often comes from a place of concern, however clumsily expressed.
Right, like that woman realized they wanted me to have someone to come back to in difficult times. It's often about their fears for your future.
That concern about the future, about navigating life's changes.
Yeah.
It brings us neatly to the book's structure, using the seasons of life. It's a useful frame.
It really is. Starting with spring, the growing up years, that intense conditioning. Grow up, get married, have kids.
Yeah, the default script. And often a time of youthful rebellion against that, wanting something different from maybe your parents' regulated lives.
The author's own story is powerful here, that dream leading her to break off an engagement, realizing she wanted a free life, a working life, a creative life, not what she saw as a housebound existence.
Then we move into autumn, a time of fruition and returns, knowing yourself better, being more present. This is often when friends might start becoming grandparents, which can bring mixed feelings.
Yeah.
Maybe a little envy, but also appreciation for your own freedom.
Exactly. And it's also about stepping into that elder role, offering wise counsel, bringing perspectives shaped by life, not necessarily by raising kids, maybe a bit eccentric.
The sources make that interesting distinction. Parents often get fast-tracked into adulthood by responsibility.
While non-parents might have a more gradual crossing into that wise elder phase.
And then winter.
Contemplation, reflection, releasing, looking towards the end of life.
And threaded through all these seasons are the echoes of earlier experiences, especially difficult ones.
Yes, the sources talk quite a bit about how tough childhood's abuse, losing a parent early, can really shape decisions about having kids.
Maxine Harris's research is mentioned. How early parental death can shatter your sense of security, creating fear of repeating that loss.
Or even lead to feeling like a perpetual child yourself, lacking role models for adulthood.
Those fears about being alone in old age really connect here. And the example of having a sibling with special needs, worrying about burdening potential children.
Rebecca Solnit's book, The Faraway Nearby, comes up too, in the context of caring for an aging parent with dementia, reminding us that caregiving takes many forms.
It all points to this need, especially if life hasn't gone as planned, to find a new narrative, to make sense of the path you're actually on.
Absolutely. Adapting and finding meaning where you are.
Which leads directly to thinking about aging in care, doesn't it? That question hanging in the air. Who will look after us?
It's the elephant in the room for many childless people. That quote from the retired religious worker is so stark. Who will look after my affairs when I vanish into Alzheimer's?
It hits hard. But the sources don't just raise the problem. They look at solutions and new ways of thinking.
Right. There's that really interesting proposal for an end-of-life allowance.
Tell me more about that.
For solo agers, single, divorced, widowed without kids, modeled on baby benefits paid from age 75 or if health fails earlier to help afford care.
Wow. A practical, policy-level idea.
Yeah.
Needs lobbying, the source says, but addresses a real gap.
Definitely. And it reflects people taking matters into their own hands, not just relying on old models, like the strong preference for aging in place.
Right. Staying home or in the neighborhood, like 90% of the U.S. want that.
And grassroots things like the village-to-village network, neighbors helping neighbors, basically. Mutual support to combat isolation.
So housing is another one mentioned.
Yeah, intentional communities, shared spaces, different generations. That story of the 88-year-old Dutch woman joining one is great. Still independent, but part of a community.
Plus, new services popping up help with downsizing, transport, finding caregivers.
And the sources even glance at AI and robots. The AIBO dog is an early example of companionship tech.
It's a growing need, clearly. The term elder orphan, or adult orphan, is used for seniors without family support.
Coined by Dr. Maria Torruella Carney, used by Carol McCock, it highlights the need for dedicated programs.
But beyond just practical care, there's the question of legacy. How do you leave a mark without children?
Irvin Yalom's idea of rippling is really beautiful here, creating these concentric circles of influence through who you are and what you do, often without even realizing it.
Legacy is impact, not just lineage. I like that. And there are practical tools too, like Jane Duncan Rogers' Before I Go guide.
Yeah, 140 questions to help you think through end-of-life planning. What matters to you? Wills can reflect this too, leaving things to friends, nephews, planning a celebration instead of a funeral.
That story of the gay friend fearing a lonely death notice, wanting the fullness of his life to be known. That's about legacy too, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's about wanting your whole story recognized. And the sources touch on philosophical ways of facing mortality.
Like Yolom using Epicurus.
Right, to tackle death anxiety. And Marcus Aurelius reminding us we're all creatures of a day, remember and remembered alike. It puts things in perspective.
Harrison Owen's open space principles are used as a metaphor too.
Yeah, the law of 2 feet. Take responsibility. Go where you can contribute or learn. And those principles, whoever comes are the right people. Whatever happens is the only thing that could have.
Acceptance, basically. Whenever it starts at the right time. When it's over, it's over. It sounds like a way to navigate life with more grace.
It does. The story of the nun, finding her own path, accepting it even when it wasn't what was expected, finding that unity consciousness that fits here, too.
And it all circles back to finding joy and fulfillment, even in later life, revisiting that bizarrely happy idea.
Yes. Examples like Iris Apfel, finding such dynamism and joy in creativity and experience.
Or the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, focusing on joy independent of circumstances, defining success as giving back. They're called positive reframers.
Finding meaning regardless of the standard script.
Which brings us nicely to challenging that standard script, challenging the norms. The sources mention pronatalism.
Right, that underlying belief or pressure that having kids is the main goal, the default setting for adulthood. Peck and Senderowitz's myth of mom and apple pie is cited.
And then figures who really push back against that, especially for women. Betty Friedan.
The feminine mystique, yeah. Busting the happy housewife myth, questioning if love means losing yourself. The author's memory of her mother pushing, merging, really illustrates that danger Friedan saw.
And Germaine Greer.
The female eunuch, fierce critique of the nuclear family, how women are taught self-hatred. Very provocative.
Then Rebecca Solnit bringing a more contemporary voice.
Questioning why brilliant women are still defined by whether they had kids, her line is fantastic. Many people make babies, only one made to the lighthouse.
Oof, powerful point. And reminding us, there are so many things to love besides one's own offspring.
Exactly. So the overall message from these sources is clear. Being childless isn't about being selfish, shallow, and self-absorbed. That's just a stereotype.
As Megan Dome's anthology title implies, there are just as many ways of being a non-parent as there are of being a parent.
It's about finding joy and fulfillment within yourself, in your own being. Cultivating that self-sufficiency. Not needing a child to validate your existence or give your life meaning.
But self-sufficiency doesn't mean isolation, does it?
Not at all. It's about how you find meaning. It can be inward, sure, but also through work, creativity, community, friendships, travel, causes, so many avenues.
So, wrapping this up, reflecting on this whole deep dive, the sheer diversity is maybe the biggest takeaway for me. It's just not one story.
Definitely not. It's a huge spectrum. And we've seen how navigating expectations, valuing autonomy is central to so many of these experiences.
And the unique ways childless people connect and contribute, especially across generations. That idea of generativity, finding different outlets.
While also acknowledging the real challenges, the grief for some, and the proactive ways people are thinking about aging and legacy outside the traditional family model.
Yeah. The sources really paint a picture of childless living not as lacking something, but just as different. Potentially free and full existence.
Marked by self-direction, self-sufficiency, connection, contribution, all possible in myriad ways.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. If a life worth living isn't only defined by having children, what are all the ways you can cultivate generativity that care for the future, that positive impact, and leave your own unique ripples in the world, whatever your family situation looks like?
That was a deep dive into the sources you provided.